Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tezayin Amud Beis. 3 lines from the top. The same Gemara that quoted the Brisa from Daf Yudal Amud Beis, saying that Rabbi Yosi ben Yoezer ish Treida and Rabbi Yosi ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim were goizer tuma on Eretz Ha'amim and goizer tuma on Klei Zechuchis. That same Brisa brings Shimon ben Shetach. Our Gemara now cites this brisa, quotes this brisa. Shimon ben Shetach tiken kesuba liisha v'gozer tuma al klei matochis. Shimon ben Shetach, although he didn't bring the institution of ksuva, that was already done even with biblical origins, that existed before, long before Shimon ben Shetach. But he was mesaking ksuva because until now the ksuva that a man would be obligated to give his wife if he were to divorce her could be given with a kli, the value of the ksuva in a kli. Shimon ben Shetach came along and said he must then have his property, his real estate, his real property be liened by this ksuva, making it more difficult for him to divorce his wife. And he was also goizer tuma on klei matochos. Ask the Gemara right away, klei matochos, da'oraisa ninhu. Vessels that are metalware, that's midiaraisa, that's susceptible of a tuma, midiaraisa. Dirsiv, it says, ach es hazov, ves hakesef, v'goimer, all types of different metals. Says the Gemara, lo nitzricha ela letuma yishana. The gzeir that Shimon Shetach was goizer on klei matechos, on metalware, was if a metal kli became tamei, and thereby a person wanted to metaher it. So he broke the kli. Once he then reconstitutes that kli, so Shimon ben Shetach says it retains its same old status with a tuma yishana. Domar Rav Yehuda Rav, Maise b'shel Tzion hamalko she'osisa mishta livna v'nitma kol kaleo. The malka named B'shel Tzion, in the time who lived at the time of Shimon ben Shetach, she made a great feast for her son, and at that feast, so the kalim became tamei. Apparently there was a mace that was in that room where she made the feast, and all the kalim became tamei. V'shabartom unesantom litzoref v'ritchan v'osa mehen kalim chadoshim. So she ordered that those kalim be broken, and they be given to the silversmith, and then put together once again as kelim chadoshim, as new kelim. V'omru chachamim yachazu l'tumosin yeshana. Those kelim that were reconstituted have the same status of tuma as they once did before. Ask the Gemara, my taimo, what's the reason? After all, they should then have the status limafreya, what they had once before, with the tuma yeshana. Says the Gemara, Mishum Geder Mechatos Naguba. They were concerned, the Chachamim, that if a person were to be able to then metire his kli mateches by going ahead and breaking it and reconstituting it, then they will not use the Mechatos instead. And that's what she did. Over here, B'shel Tzion, the Malka, when she didn't want to wait for the mechatos, which requires the sprinkling of the mechatos on the 3rd day and the 7th day, which would take a whole process, a week-long process, to metire the kalim, when he comes in contact with a dead person. So thereby, she decided this patent, another way of doing it, to break the kli and then reconstitute it. So the Chachamim were afraid that the people are no longer going to use the institution of mechatos. So they've said that there's a gzeira of tuma yeshana on such a kli that was reconstituted. Says the Gemara, Hanich leman da omar loy lekol hatumois. Hanich leman da omar loy lekol hatumois amru. Elatumas hameis bilvad amru shapir. Those who said that this is only stated in regards to this tumas hayishana on kelim that became tamei as a result of a tumas hames, then we have a good reason to explain that they made a gzeira because they were concerned about somebody not using then the mechatos. That this was indeed a tuma yeshana on all clay mateches, all metalware that were reconstituted, even if they became tamei in a different way other than through a mace, which do not require the tahara process of mechatos. What are you going to say? What was the reason for this tuma yeshana? Abaye explains that the reason was, as a gezeira, they shouldn't make a hole in order to then metaher it. In other words, they were worried that a person will make a small hole in this vessel, which will be a way of being metaher the hole, metaher the kli, because now it's a shever kli. But because in order to make a kli now tahor, it has to have a sized hole of a size of a rimon, of a pomegranate. Like we learn in Brachos Daf Mem Aleph, that they used to have a kli, a balabayas did not want to then get rid of the kli so easily. So if it had a small hole that he until now was using for, let's say, legumes, so then he would now use the kli for something a little bit bigger, let's say for nuts. And therefore, if it got a hole that's bigger than that, then he would use it for, or let's say he would use it for olives. It got a hole bigger than that, he would use it for nuts. And only when it got a hole bigger than that, then he would use it for pomegranates. Finally, if the hole was so big, as big as a pomegranate, then it was considered to be a shever kli and mikabel tuma. And no longer mikabel tuma, it would be toho rather. So said the Gemara, we made a gezeira, the Chacham made a gezeira, that they would worry that people would make a small hole, smaller than a pomegranate, whereby they would think that the kli is now tahor, when it was really still tamei. So therefore they were goizer a tuma yeshana on such a kli that was reconstituted. Rav Amar gezeira shema yoimu tvila bas yoimo oilala. Rav is the opinion that they made the gezeira as a result of because of tvila bas yoima, since a kli that was tamei was then nitbal, was brought into the mikvah. So such a kli, if you wait till the nightfall, becomes tahor again. And they were concerned that if a person then used a reconstituted kli, and people will then see that it's being reused right away in the same day, they would think that you don't need to then wait until Herev Shemesh, until nightfall. And therefore they made a gzeir of Tumas Yeshana on this Kli. Ask the Gemara, my Beinayu, what is the difference between Abaye and Rava's opinion in terms of the gezeira? Says the Gemara, Ika Beinayu, the Ritzafni Mirtzaf, that if it was completely broken, according to this, if it was completely broken, so in regards to the hole, so if it was completely broken, there's not a concern that the hole would be made too small because it was completely broken and then reconstituted. But in regards to then a kli that needed to be in the mikvah, if they would think that a reconstituted kli can then be used even before nightfall, that still would be a reason to then metamet at the tuma yeshana. Ask the Gemara, granted we found initially, we said there were 10, we stated 10 different of the gzeros, of the enactments of the 18, and we took out one of them because we said that one is the araisa. Therefore we're left with 9. Ask the Gemara, V'idach maihi, what is an additional one of these gzeros that we listed in the Mishnah as 18? This nan, we say we follow the following Mishnah in Mikvos. Hameniach kelim tachas hatzinor lekabo mehen megeshamim. If a person wants to then put a tzinor into the ground before it became hollowed out, and they put it into the ground, only subsequently they hollowed it out, so it's not susceptible to tumah. So if rainwater goes into this tzinor and then ultimately goes into the mikvah, then it's good water. It's considered to be rainwater without mayim she'uvim, not drawn water. However, here we're talking about they placed a kli underneath the tzinor, underneath this pipe that was going and leading into the mikvah. And it says over here, a person who places such a kli underneath the tzinor, and it's mekabel megeshamim achar kelim gedolim ve'echad kelim ketanim, whether it's large kelim or smaller kelim, va'afilu klei avonim v'klei adom v'klei glolim, even these type of kelim that are normally not susceptible to tuma, here they're considered to be causing the mayim to be mayim she'uvim, that if they're put into the mikvah before there's a full 40 saw in the mikvah, it will poisel the mikvah. If it's shlosha lugi mayim she'uvim, it was considered to be drawn water. Poisel is on mikvah, then they will have the status of the water that's gathered in this kelim to be mayim she'uvim, and it will poisel the mikvah. Whether a person places the kli underneath the tzinar, the pipe, or he leaves it there inadvertently, according to Beis Shammai, that will be poisel as a mikvah, as mayim she'uvim. Ubeis Hillel metarim b'shocheach. Beis Hillel says if it was left there inadvertently, then it will be tohor. The Gemara is going to explain this machlokes shortly. Reb Meir nimnu v'rabu Beis Shammai al Beis Hillel. There was a vote between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and Beis Shammai outvoted Beis Hillel, whereby the halacha was nikva after Beis Shammai. So this became one of the 18th. Umoidin Beis Shammai b'shocheach b'chotzer shehu tohor. However, Beis Shammai was moided to Beis Hillel if it was forgotten, the kli was left there forgotten in a chotzer, and then rain fell into this kli, that is not considered to be mayim she'uvim, and rather it will be mayim taharim. Or Rabbi Yosi adayin machlokes b'mekom medrash. Rabbi Yosi is choylek on Rabbi Meir, and he says that indeed there's no machlokes over here. This machlokes wasn't one of the things that was outvoted, that Beis Shammai outvoted Beis Hillel with, and therefore the same machlokes that they had remains. Is not considered to be one of the things that was of the 18 enactments. Rabbi Sharsha, the Bei Rabbi Amrei, Rabbi Sharsha said that in the house, in the Beis Medrash of Rav Amrei, they said, Hakol Moedim, everybody agrees, to explain the machlokes that we said before, in Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, everybody agrees, Kisheniecham b'shas kishor alvim tmeim, that if these kelim were left in a time when underneath they were left underneath the tzinar, in a time when the clouds were overcast and it looked like it was going to rain, then for sure, if he then left those kelim underneath the tzinarim and underneath the pipes in order to, let's say, go to his malacha, and he left them there, certainly everybody would agree, including Beis Hillel, that the waters that gather in this kli would be tamei. B'shas pizur avim divrei kol taharim. If after leaving the kelim underneath the pipes, it was clear outside, that means all the clouds then dissipated. So then afterwards he forgot those kelim over there underneath the pipes. Then everybody agreed that the mayim that are gathered in this kli is considered to be mayim taharim, because you need to have kavana that you want that the mayim be gathered, and here was forgotten. So even Beis Shammai would agree to Beis Hillel over here that the mayim taharim. Lo nechleku ella shehanicham b'shas kishor ovim v'nispazru v'chazru v'niskashu. They're arguing about a situation where you place the kli underneath the tzinar. Initially it was overcast, looking like it was going to rain. Subsequently the clouds dissipated, and then only afterwards the clouds then the clouds came again. So in between, when the clouds dissipated, so the person forgot the kelim there. And even though the clouds came back and it rained, over here we have a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Mar saver batlo machshavtoi. According to Beis Hillel, batlo machshavto, and therefore it's considered to be now that the waters are there inadvertently, whereby it's mayim taharim, and they're going to be then valid for the mikvah. Umar sover lo batlo machshavtoi. Whereas Beis Shammai says no, the machshav was not nisbatel, and therefore these are mayim tameim. And therefore Rabbi Meir says this is one of the things again that Beis Shammai outvoted Beis Hillel on. Rabbi Yosi asked the Gemara, "Da Amar machlokes adayim b'makayim medes batri lahu." But according to Rabbi Yosi, who argues on Rabbi Meir and says that indeed that machlokes still remains, In other words, Beis Hillel was never outvoted. So then we're lacking one of these gezeros, one of these 18 enactments. What does Rabbi Yossi then include instead of this? Says the Gemara, Rav Nachem bar Yitzchok, af benois kutim nidois me'arisoson boy bayom gozru. That which there was instituted a gezerah on the kutim, that although they kept mitzvahs, but not all of the mitzvahs, and one of the mitzvahs they didn't keep precisely was that if a child were to then become a nida, then she would become tameh. They were only careful for women who became nidos, but children not. And since it's possible for a girl to have a dam nida, whereby that would make her then tameh, they made a gezerah on the kutim, bonos kutim, afilu me'arisoson, even from their little young age of being in the crib. And on that day, this was a gezerah that was made. So this is included, according to Rabbi Yossi, as one of the 18 gezeros that Beis Shammai then made and outvoted Beis Hillel.